My name is Jeff Greenwalt. It's Jeffgreenwalt as in Tom. I'm a lieutenant with the Austin Police Department assigned to the homicide and aggravated assault units. And we're here to discuss a homicide that occurred yesterday at 1912 West 35th Street. I want to go over just a couple of brief facts of the case and a synopsis, and then open it up for any questions that you might have. Yesterday is Tuesday, January 26th, 2021 at approximately 4:30. Austin Police 911 received a report of a man with a gun who entered a pediatric doctor's office and took several people hostage. The Austin Police Department responded to the scene quickly and were able to verify through witnesses that the information about a man inside with a gun with hostages was true. There were 5 people inside the building when the suspect arrived, and all of them were adult employees. There were no patients or children that were at the building when the suspect arrived on scene. When the suspect arrived, he displayed a gun and told the hostages to tie themselves up. Some of the hostages were able to escape, and some of them were ultimately released. Unfortunately, one of the employees of the doctor's office, Dr. Catherine Lindley Dodson, a 43-year-old female, was not able to escape and was taken hostage by the suspect, who's been identified as Dr. Bharat Narumanchi, a 43-year-old male. Because we had a barricaded situation, a hostage inside and a man with a gun, the officers on scene followed policy and called our SWAT unit, who responded immediately. Our SWAT unit was able to arrive on scene and contain the scene. They were not able to make contact with anybody inside. We're not able to establish communication, and we're not able to hear anything as far as a disturbance or calls for help or gunshots or anything like that. Several hours later, when SWAT was able to get eyes inside of the business to see what was going on, we were able to see that both subjects were deceased. The victim, Dr. Dodson, died at the hands of the suspect, who is Dr. Narumanchi, who died because of a suicide. So this is investigated as a murder-suicide. We are at the process of trying to figure out what Mr. Narumanchi's involvement was at this particular doctor's office, why he targeted this particular doctor. We know that approximately a week or two earlier, he did walk to the office and applied for a volunteer position where he wanted to help out. He is a pediatric doctor, but he was told no, and we don't know if that's the reason he decided to come back or if there's some other involvement that he may have had. And we also know that the suspect, Dr. Narumanchi, had terminal cancer and was only given weeks to live. So we feel like his terminal cancer probably played a large part in whatever it was that occurred in his life and what was happening yesterday. We don't know exactly why he chose to take these actions or target this particular business, and we're asking if anybody is friends with either Dr. Dodson or Dr. Narumanchi and knows why he may have wanted to come to this particular business or knows what may have been going on in his life or his thought process, please call out to the Austin Police Department tip line and let us know. For all intents and purposes, the case as far as who did this is closed. We know who did it, and we know that there's no longer a threat to the public, but we really, really want to answer the question of why and provide as many facts and circumstances to the family and friends as we can, and provide as much closure in this tragic situation as we can. If anybody does have any information, the standard tip line numbers are still applicable. The Austin Police Department tip line is 974-TIPS. Crime Stoppers is 472-8477. And anybody can call 1-800-CRIME STOPPERS at any time or go online and remain anonymous. Does anybody have any questions?
Have you been able to get in touch with the suspect's family to kind of get an idea of what exactly may have caused him to target this officer? I know you said he was told no last week and also but has his family given any insight?
So we were able to get in touch with family even before we discovered everybody deceased inside the business. And they're absolutely cooperating with the investigation. I think yesterday's events surprised them as much as it did us. We've asked for them to share with us anything that they might learn over the next few days and weeks in terms of providing any type of closure. And they've promised to do that for us. They have expressed interest in wanting to reach out to the victim's family too. This is a shock to them as it is to the rest of us.
And so this may have been random. He may not have known Dr. Dodson at all.
We know that they had contact a week or two previous when he applied for the position. Other than that, we don't know at this time of any other contact that they had or any relationship that they had. And that's why we're asking for help. It's only been less than 24 hours. Right now, We only know that, but we feel like as time goes on and we start to look at his personal life and talk to friends and family, that there might be more information that comes out that can hopefully provide some sort of insight, some sort of answers as to why he chose that.
And do you know if this was a shooting?
Did you have specific contact with Dr. Dodson or contact just with the doctor's office itself?
My understanding is that he kind of just walked in and had contact with numerous people, her being one of them.
And was this a shooting, or do we know how they died?
He did have numerous guns on him when he entered the building. The specific details will come out in the weeks to follow. We normally don't release those kind of specific details immediately.
Did Dr. Narumanchi show any signs of suspicious behavior before the shooting happened? And when was his diagnosis of his cancer?
I was told recent, but I don't know if that means days, weeks, or months, but he was given a terminal diagnosis, and the family was entertaining, the hospice care step in that process. And as far as suspicious behavior, that's what we want to know. A lot of times suspicious behavior is not so suspicious when it's happening because you're just not thinking about that. But when you look backwards and you think with 20/20 hindsight, now knowing what happened, little things that weren't suspicious at the time mean more. And that's why we're asking for family and friends to really think about what they've known, what people have said, and bring that to our attention so we can put all the pieces together.
How are the
Can you
hostages
know
who
what kind of
escaped? How are they
cancer he
able
had?
to escape?
Each one of the four of them has their own kind of unique story and situation on how they got out, and we're still taking a lot of statements and sorting through all that, so I don't want to get into the specifics, but I think that's one of the things that will come out over the next few weeks.
Can you tell us?
Released, or did all of them have to escape?
Some of them escaped, and some of them were released.
How many were released?
We're still getting into the details of exactly how they got out and whether or not they were given, quote-unquote permission to leave.
So Dr. Dodson was the remaining hostage,
That's correct.
and at some point after being the remaining hostage, she was shot.
That's correct.
So before
there was
that,
no
there
one
were 5
else.
hostages that were stuck inside, not including those that escaped that were probably working in.
When he entered the building, there were 5 employees, Dr.
Including
Dr. Dodson being one of the 5.
Okay, gotcha.
4 people got out safely. Some of those 4 escaped. Some of those 4 were released.
Can you tell us the approximate time of death between the suspect and the victim?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us the approximate time of death for Dodson and the suspect?
The specifics are oftentimes given in larger time ranges than we really want, and the medical examiner's office is the one that does that, and they haven't even done the autopsies yet.
How did he hold them hostage? In what way did he threaten them to hold them hostage?
So he displayed a gun immediately upon entry. The specific details of what happened after that are not being released at this time.
Do we know if the suspect? Do we know if the suspect is a local pediatrician? I mean, we had been given these names, so we hadn't looked it up in advance until you obviously guys would confirm this. But we had seen that potentially, at least this name, a pediatrician appeared from California. So was he at least local? Has he been here for a while? Or?
I don't know.
We saw a number of adults coming out of the area, and they were in shock, visibly. Did you guys have victims services to help them out?
We did, and I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to address one thing that had come up in some of the tweets and some of the social media that was coming out in the hours after this particular incident. I've worked with victim services since my days on patrol and worked with them very, very closely as a violent crimes investigator for over 7 years. We have a top-notch victim services unit. They do amazing things. They were on scene very, very quickly, and they assigned a victim services supervisor to work with the family and a separate victim services counselor to work with the suspect's family. We were there quickly. We were there on scene. They were there to provide support to family and friends and the employees who were inside. And as soon as the Austin Police Department discovered that the victim and the suspect were deceased, the families were given notification within minutes. And the employees who were inside were given notification within minutes. There was a very large crowd that gathered. A lot of those people were onlookers. Some of them were friends. Some of them were neighbors, supporters of the family. It really would have been inappropriate to just gather a large crowd around and make a notification in that manner. So some of the people in the crowd found out that the victims were deceased at the same time the press conference happened, and I think there was an audible gasp that kind of happened, which is a little bit unusual. It's not the ideal manner. However, there was no inappropriate nature in which the victim services counselors conducted their business. Everything was done in the appropriate manner.
Do you happen to
What prompted
know?
y'all to finally send in the
She started
robot?
first.
Do you happen to know what type of cancer the suspect had,
I
and
don't
also
know.
if he had any other sort of medical issues?
I don't know.
Maybe medical.
what prompted y'all to finally send in the robot into the building? Because I think our reporter on scene noted that there was a long period of silence between communication or something. What really prompted y'all to do that?
So the SWAT unit has their own, procedures and policies and tactics that they use, and we generally don't get into the specifics of what they do because the next time there's a call out, then that information can be used to the advantage of the wrong people.
Were APD's mental health professionals involved in this situation?
Yes, we had hostage negotiators on scene who are mental health trained and specifically trained to talk to people who are in the middle of a barricaded or crisis type of subject.
And so since we're waiting for the medical examiner, we don't know how long they may have been deceased before entry was made. Is that correct?
When the medical examiner releases their report, which can sometimes you get that information back in hours, sometimes they need to do additional testing, which can take weeks or months. Sometimes we get additional insight, but even in the best of circumstances, a lot of times the time of death is given in a range, which includes usually a few hours, and so you don't get the specificity that you really want. It's not like TV where they come to the scene and they give you an exact time that somebody died or anything like that.
Does the office itself have any kind of cameras set up, any kind of surveillance?
I know that's part of the investigation is to look at not only the business itself, inside and outside, but the area businesses to see what other information we can get.
When you guys have a case like this where obviously it could seem random, but you did say that he at least had that one visit about potentially becoming a volunteer. When you guys have something like this, I mean, what runs through your mind knowing that potentially these people did have a connection before this?
I think Austin is a pretty safe place. I know that violent crime has been rising in the last year, and we're seeing higher numbers of aggravated assaults and robberies and homicides than we have. Still, given that context, this is a pretty unusual thing for Austin. I've been talking to a number of different officers and detectives, some senior sergeants here at the police department about the last time something like this happened where we had a SWAT call out in a hostage situation, and we really can't remember one. Not in recent memory that I can remember. There may have been one, but it's extremely unusual for this to happen. Most of our homicides involve somebody who is acquainted and some sort of friend or family or at least loose acquaintance type of way.
And you've been here for how long?
I've been here 20 years.
So in the 20 years you haven't seen anything?
Not that I can recall.
Now, with the hostages who were released, was that due to hostage negotiators basically being able to coach them out, or
that happened before police got there? So when the patrol officers first got there, all 4 of those hostages were already out and were able to give information to the officers on scene, which helped incredibly in terms of getting information about what was going on inside, who was inside, and what was happening.
Were any of them injured in any type of way?
Not that I know of.
One last question.
For the community members or patients of Dr. Dodson, what would you say to them as they're grieving right now?
We the same thing I would say to any of our homicide victims, family and friends. Any homicide under any circumstances, regardless of where it occurs or who it involves, is horribly tragic. And our hearts go out to the victims and the families and the friends. And I think that she's got a large support network. From what I saw on the news and social media and in the circles of information that I've seen, I think that she's going to have a very large support network of family and friends. Her family will have a very large support network. So I think that you have to rely on that support network to get through that situation and move on in life.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much.